Hi and welcome back to PDA Dad UK. This is an episode that for me was very moving to do and really touching, and really highlighted the issues being faced in Ukraine for the everyday people who are just trying to get out, basically. This was an interview that myself and Chris from the Grumpy Gits did together, and we have the edited version over on the Grumpy Gits. So if you want to check that out, please do. The link will be in the description. But for now, this is an episode that we've basically is the full extended version, everything that was said. And you know, I don't want to say too much more. I'll let the interview speak for itself. But thank you for joining me. Yeah, as Adam said, we have got what's going to be quite a moving interview, I think. We have got Nataliya who is a Ukrainian national who has been living in the UK, who has been in the very challenging position of having to try and bring her mother back from Ukraine so that she's able to keep her safe. So before we go on, I'm going to welcome Nataliya. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, Duncan. Yes, thank you very much for inviting me today. I'm happy to share my story, what has happened. It has been a very difficult month, just over a month since it all happened. Yeah, so go ahead. Any questions? I'm happy to tell my story.
Well, I guess the first and most obvious one is, when this all unfolded, what was it like for you hearing about what's happening and realizing that Russia was invading? How did that come across? What happened?
Strangely enough, prior to that fateful day on the 24th, I didn't have any anticipation of anything wrong. I was quite calm about it. My husband came home on a Wednesday, the 23rd, and he said to me, I've got a really bad feeling. How about we ask your mum to come and visit, stay maybe for 6 months with us, see how things happen, because it's I feel a bit strange feeling. And I was like, I don't know, I don't think so. But if you insist, I'm happy for mum to come and visit us, because we haven't seen her for 3 years now, COVID and everything. So I opened up the paperwork, rang mom, said to her, how do you feel about coming over? And she's like, yeah, okay. So I started filling out the application, left it, went to bed about 1 o'clock. And then at night, that was 5 o'clock here in the UK, my phone started pinging. And I thought, that's odd. Nobody really contacts me, during the week. So I looked at the message, and it was a message from my mom, and it read, the war has started. And I woke up, I went downstairs, I was trying to read the message, like looking, is it really, am I still asleep? And then she rang me and she said, I'm just ringing to say goodbye, because I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make through this, or if the electricity is gonna be, or if we lose the connection. And I just broke down in tears, because then I realized how serious it was. So I started crying. My husband woke up, everybody woken up, they couldn't understand what happened. And I just said, the war has started, the full-on war. And we were like in total shock, disbelief, panic, stress, not knowing what to do. We couldn't go to sleep. I was like putting my husband straight away, putting on the news, seeing what's happening. Then I started getting messages with pictures of explosions from my family members. And yeah, it was completely surreal. Like, I don't know, bad dream. Even the next day, for the next few days, I was waking up and I was thinking, am I still asleep? Maybe it's just a dream. Maybe I just go to bed, wake up, and it's going to be back to the normal day like it was. But it wasn't. So the news were coming, and I knew it's not a dream, it's happening. And the first initial reaction was we've got to get mom out. And in 9 o'clock in the morning that day, the 24th, sorry, I'm kind of jumping from day to day, I rang the home office, the helpline, and I said, what can we do? The war has started. My mom is there. She's a Ukrainian national, but I'm a UK national. But this is my mom. We've got to help her. And the home office said, she needs to go to Kiev and apply for visa. And I'm like, well, how? There's martial law. You can't use the public transport. She lives in another town, about 2 hours drive from Kiev. So they didn't have any answers. That was frustrating. But they said, okay, just we'll sorting it out. And then my sister, who lives in Austria, so she's also Ukrainian national, she was in the same position. She said she couldn't get through to the embassies. Everything was they didn't answer the phones. So we understood that it was definitely the panic, because nobody expected this would happen. Yeah. And they were trying to sort things out. And we kind of made a decision with my sister that she will drive with her husband to the border in Poland and get my mom over to cross. And we were just persuading mom to pack quickly. And where she lives, she's got her niece and their little daughter, the 6-year-old. So they were together there in that situation. And we were just making sure that they sending them messages with what they got to pack. And because they were in a complete state themselves, didn't know. And of course, it's difficult to kind of just drop everything and run. They were scared that the roads were closed, the shooting could happen. They had made a plan to drive through the woods or something like that, so that at least it's not on the main road. So yeah, that it was just a complete mess. And then, of course, from what mom has been telling me, they were traveling for 2 days. So they set off on a Friday morning at 8 o'clock on Friday morning, the 25th, and they didn't get through until the 3 o'clock in the morning on 27th. Wow. So they spend nearly 2 days, so 10 or 15 hours traveling in the car, and then trying to cross the border on foot. So they walked for a few hours, then they stood there the whole day out in the open. So with no facilities, there was no toilets, there was no water, food. There's maybe like volunteers drop them off a bottle of water somewhere, but they couldn't leave the queue because people lose the queue and couldn't get through. Mum said that there was a lady who died next to them in the queue, so dropped dead. There was the children that had a bit of an accident, fell down, knocked their head, had to be taken in the ambulance, so they didn't make it. And yeah, so it took them, and they were there with my cousin and her little daughter, who's 6 years old. She stood there all this time in the cold. I was just pleased that at least it wasn't snowing and it wasn't raining. It was actually a sunny day, so that kind of somebody was looking over them, I think. And so eventually they squeezed through, managed to get past the security, and their paperwork was checked. And on the Ukrainian border, they didn't really do any computer checks. They were just putting stamps and just going, letting people through. But sheer amount of humans, and obviously the vehicles that were going with the supplies. So they had a lot on their hands. So we understand that it was difficult. And I was here in the UK. I was completely panicking. I didn't know what to do because they stood there for hours and hours. I found some phone numbers for the Polish border where they stood. And I don't speak Polish, so I made a post on Facebook asking people who can speak Polish to ring the number to find out what's going on. So they did. And the Polish border control explained that on their side, they were working really fast. The delays were on the Ukrainian side. And eventually, when they made it there, they got through, were helped by the border control people, by volunteers. They were really good, supportive. And then my sister took over, and they obviously, for my sister, it was also challenging because they drove for 10 hours from Austria, and then they stood there for 2 days waiting for them. They didn't go anywhere either. So they were just on Red Bull and coffee. I don't know how they survived, but they did. So
sorry, can I ask, is it right that your mum was basically in charge of, was it your niece and a 6-year-old? Your mum was in charge from getting them where she was to the Polish border. Is that right?
So there was my mom, her niece, which is my cousin, and my cousin's daughter. So
just the 3 of them.
Just 3 of them, yes, because from Zhytomyr, that's where they lived. They were driven in the car by my cousin's partner.
Right.
He drove them to the border, sort of as far as he could towards the border, let them out. So they walked through the forest by foot, and he had to turn back and go because he couldn't leave. He's staying in the territorial defense. So I guess I was in tears because to me it felt really emotional knowing that the dad will have to say goodbye to his little daughter and his partner and leave them there walking through the forest, not knowing what would happen to them. Yeah, so that's kind of was really, really hard.
It's the stuff you hear. You see it in films. You don't get the sense of it in real life like that.
That's what I mean. That's why I was thinking it's just some kind of weird dream I'm having or something, because and these are my family, it's not just like actors. I know these are real people, and it's really, really happening to them. So we were, and I was here completely powerless because first of all, I'm really far away. I don't have any influence, and when you're doing something, I guess it's a little bit easier because you're in the action. But when you're paralyzed here, far away, and thinking like, not knowing so many factors could happen, like shoot-ups, I don't know, delays, the sickness, the bad weather. Yeah, so that was very emotional, very difficult 2 days for my family here, and obviously for them. But yeah, they made it somehow. Like I say, my husband said, oh, somebody was definitely looking over them because so many things could have happened. Yeah. And they made it on the 27th. That was a Sunday. And my sister and her husband drove them to Austria. And that's where they remained while I was here sorting out all these visas, ringing the home office, finding out. And each time there was just, you got to wait, because in the past, everybody had to pay for their visas. So we had to, every time when mom had to come here, it costed. So for 6 months, and then they were changing the rules. They thought of a different way that you could bring your relatives over under the family migrate route. This is what they called it. But as they were talking, the politicians, about it, things were not quite there yet on the system. So every time I would ring, and they would say, well, madam, you just wait. And I was in desperation. I was asking them, look, what can I do? Just put yourself in my shoes, please. You know, if it was your mother, what would you do? Because, you know, they always would say, oh, we can't tell you this. You know, you have to wait. We can't do this. We can't do that. So then I just said, you know, what if it was your mom? You know, I'm talking to you now, not to somebody who's doing their job. I'm talking to you like human to human. And he just said, madam, please come down. Just wait. Like, you know, I thought, okay, that's reassuring. I just wait. So I waited and waited until the 15th of March. And that's when they put everything in place and then said that people would need to go to this visa processing centers. And eventually on the 17th of March, I had a reply that mom could come in. So they looked at her visa and issued the invitation letter.
So you got to that point where what do you do then? You went to go and collect her, or?
Yeah, so this Saturday, mom arrived to Stansted Airport, and I went and I got her, and then here she is.
Hey!
Here she is. Here's the mom.
Wow,
It's amazing.
that is incredible.
Yeah, so she was
welcome.
well and alive. So mom's English isn't perfect. If you would like to ask any questions, go ahead. I'll do a bit of a translation. So mom, Tetyana, her name is, and yes, she made it.
Welcome, Tetyana.
Would you mind asking her how did the war begin for her? When did she really believe that it was happening? Did she kind of see anything? This is really happening now. This is real life, rather than, you know, hearing it over the television or the radio. Did she encounter anything where she went, this is real, we need to get out?
В 5 часов 05, 5:05 в Житомире, я находилась же в Житомире, раздался такое, 2 таких взрыва мощных, что все люди повыбегали на улицу. Лично я была уставшая, поскольку я была в Киеве на похоронах и поздно вернулась. Я не слышала. Но мне сразу же пришло СМС и фото этих взрывов. Я не могла понять. Мне Оля написала, это Озерное. Аэропорт.
Давай я перевяжу. So at 5:05 in the morning, that's on the 24th, in Zhytomyr, that's the city where she lived, were 2 explosions, huge explosions. So people ran outside. Mom, because she was at the funeral the night before and went to bed late, like about 1 o'clock, because we were talking about her visa, potential visa, and things like that. She was asleep, and didn't hear the explosions, but she got the messages on her phone from her niece who lives next door, sending the messages saying, did you hear the explosions? Mom's like, what explosions? And then she couldn't understand what it was, because they took a picture. They ran outside and took a picture of the fire of explosion in the, that was on the other side of the town, but it was visible in the sky at night.
Wow.
So they took a picture and sent it to mom, and then of course after that,
Это большой город Житомир,
130
километров от Киева.
It's a quite large town where she is. It's about 130 kilometers from Kiev.
How far away was that explosion?
Взрывы сразу же произошли. В 4 часа Киев, с 4 до 5 начали бомбить. В 5 Житомир, это больше, чем в 15 местах. Больше 10 городов одновременно.
So she's saying that the explosions have happened from about 4 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock in the morning, all over Ukraine, but in different locations. So in Kiev, in
Киев, Житомир, все областные города.
every regional center had at least 2-3 explosions at the same time. So it was like not just one
Yeah.
particular town. So they must have launched the rockets into this.
Это стреляли ракетами.
Coordinated
из
attack.
So these were the rockets launched from Belarus part.
Белоруссия, да.
Right.
И там, где Донецк, это вот Львов, Белоруссия, Житомир, мы рядом с Беларусью.
Because Zhytomyr and Lviv happen to have closest to the Belarus side, Kiev, so that's the neighboring country. That's where they launched their rockets to Zhytomyr part. But как далеко эти которые
700 километров.
Нет, взрывы в Озерном. Как далеко, где ты живешь от твоего дома?
Наверное, 20 километров. Но
So
были такие...
So the first question that you asked, how far was the explosion from Mom's place, was about 20 kilometers. I
And
don't know.
Было
It's like,
такое, что...
you heard it as well.
Да.
Wow.
What does emotionally, what do you go through at a moment like that? Like, I can only put myself in a very remote understanding. What goes through your mind as you realize what's happening?
Эмоционально, ну, первое, что мне хотелось, ну, конечно, мы все не верили. Мы думали, что это что-то не взрывы же, мы же не видели, как летели эти ракеты. Это же был ракетный удар. 700 километров эти ракеты.
ну, понятно, да, эмоционально.
Мы вначале не поверили, начали друг другу звонить. Первое, что мне хотелось сделать, это попрощаться с вами, сказать, что я вас очень люблю, потому что мы могли не увидеться уже.
Emotionally, it was first is disbelief, so that it cannot be happening because they haven't actually seen the rockets flying. So when maybe you see it flying, you know that, but the explosions, they were like, maybe it's not, maybe it's not what it's supposed to be. Maybe it's something else. And second thought was obviously to say goodbye to the loved ones, just in case they won't get another chance.
Мы же не знали, сколько,
So
где, что,
they
ничего.
didn't, because they were completely caught off guard.
Не было.
There
Вообще
was
никто не
no-
готов был.
There was no like a warning, maybe siren or something. It happened later, but initially no warning, no, completely off guard. And the first, maybe it's not true, but if it is true, say goodbye. And because you don't know what could be. What could
Was there
happen.
any sense of this coming prior to that? Like, we had news here, obviously, letting people know that there was concern about the Russians amassing troops along the borders and stuff like that. Was there a knowledge within inside Ukraine that this was potentially coming, or was it just hidden from them?
Но в самой в Украине у вас
Нет,
было
нам
предчувствие?
всем говорили, что не будет войны. Мы были на 99% уверены, что Россия никогда так не сделает.
They were 99% sure that Russia would never do that. So they were fully reassured that it's not gonna happen.
Вообще не были готовы.
It was absolutely not in the slightest any thought that would happen. So total confidence
До самого
that it's-
вечера никаких новостей. ничего
up
не
to the very
говорили,
evening. There
ничего.
was no news, no nothing. Nobody said anything on television.
Только сказали, что дети не будут идти в школу и все. Потому
Кто
что
сказал?
учителя прислали смс.
The teachers did send the messages to the children saying that they wouldn't be going to school. Когда они прислали?
Ну,
этот
вот
день?
перед школой, да, в 8 утра прислали.
In the morning, at 8
Да.
o'clock in the morning,
Все
on the
люди шли на
24th.
работу, собирались идти на
So
работу.
after the explosions happened and they started, just the school sent the messages saying to the kids, don't come to school. But everybody else was still unaware, and some people even went to work.
По телевизору ничего не
There was
говорили,
nothing on
только в
television.
интернете мы между собой.
And people amongst
Писали.
themselves were exchanging messages in the internet and getting the feel of what has happened and getting understanding, because there was nothing on state TV.
Да. Ну, поехали мужчины, бензин, очередь стояла 12-20 километров. За
But once
бензином
it
и хлеб
happened,
разобрали.
Once it happened, everybody ran to get the fuel, because I guess people straight away knew that
Ну, ничего не понимали.
fuel and bread disappeared from the shops. So there was queues to get the fuel, but everybody else, all the general population, was in a complete rabbits in the headlights, not knowing what to do, not understanding how to behave. So there was no preparedness whatsoever.
Я потом где-то, ну, наверное, днем пришло от Геращенко, это советник президента, написано было, сколько городов обстреляно. Вся Украина, столько-то городов. Но я же начала подругам звонить, тете, все. Они говорят, так кому ты веришь? Нашла ты
So
кому верить?
about in afternoon there was a где ты это прочитала в интернете?
Ну да, это уже было. Мы друг другу пересылали, Оля мне прислала это.
So
Даже мне
her niece has
пересылали
sent
это.
a document on the internet
Так.
where the advisor, presidential advisor, I guess, Gerashenko, the name, send the information, detailed information, which cities and towns and locations in Ukraine were
Сколько обстреляно.
where the rockets were launched. Yeah, so where was the shootings? So they
Все
send
думали,
that,
что это фейк.
and everybody, all the other people, thought it was a fake news, that it wasn't true. Some still were doubting and saying, why do you believe whatever you read on the internet?
So it's almost that sort of, there was so little information. It was like trying to pick the truth out of.
Ничего не было готово. Ни
Yeah.
бомбоубежища.
People were not ready. There was no shelter. Bomb shelters were not prepared in where, so to mom's knowledge, because they live on the periphery of the town, sort of rural part of the town, the end of the town, maybe center, maybe Kiev. I know, so slightly off the topic, my friends who lived at the time in Kiev, and one of them was a teacher. She said that they were doing practices a week before taking children to the bomb shelter. So I guess there was preparations in some locations, like capital, for
It
instance.
wasn't universal.
But it wasn't universal, no.
Блогеры эти же начали уже показывают, слышны взрывы. Это вот
Yeah,
одна ресторатор, она в Москве работала много. Она говорит, вот я вижу эти, бегут.
So the people like bloggers, the social media users, or the who makes the most of the social media, they were recording and sharing the news to their audience, but general public, especially those who are not following any bloggers and not really on social media, like older generation, they were completely oblivious to what was happening. Yeah, so they would say, I see it in the window, tanks and soldiers running and things like that, and yeah, near Kiev. But
Russia's come out with a whole host of reasons on why this has happened. Silly things like there's an influx of neo-Nazis, that it's to do with oil, or it's NATO's expansion. What was Ukraine like as a country to live in?
Ничего этого не было. Ничего. Я же жила в Львовской области, где считается бандеровцы.
This was not really the case. Whatever Russia is saying, this is not the truth. Mom, from her personal experience, she's actually by profession is a teacher of Russian language and literature. So she lived a long time in Russia, and for the last 20 odd years, she's been living in Ukraine. And in the very western parts of Ukraine, Lviv region, that's where people speak primarily Ukrainian language, and she has never experienced any hostility towards her. She is not really Ukrainian speaker. Being born in USSR, she speaks Russian, and so it's easier. She understands Ukrainian, but it's easier for her to pronounce words and say it in Russian. And but despite this, she never experienced anything.
I just want to, there was no good reason or any reason whatsoever for Russia to invade or to change Ukraine from what it was.
No, there was never any reasons to.
Россия, она всегда завидовала Украине. Там люди такие пьющие, ленивые. Сам народ такой. Много национальностей, более 100 национальностей живет в России.
In Russia, there's over 100 different nationalities that live in Russia. And largely the population, she was living in Russia for 14 years. So and being a teacher, and she lived 5 years in Moscow. So from her own experience, she knows that people who live in Russia often envy others. So there is a sense of envy, and having that multicultural sort of society where they live. So there's always internal conflicts and things like that. So, and they drink alcohol and they not necessarily very educated in rural, I guess, in rural, because Russia is a big place.
Yeah.
It's a very big place, and there's a lot of population. Only Moscow and St. Petersburg, where lots of intelligent people, cultural people, and it's a big city where money is, where's universities and places. So, but periphery of Russia is quite it's quite wild. 100 different nationalities. So it's not homogeneous for society. So Russians only. And they know only Russian. People in Russia, because of their diversity, they actually feel a bit oppressed in a way. They only know their culture is being oppressed, so they have to comply and learn Russian. But life is very different in Ukraine, because in Ukraine we have diversity, but you could speak whatever language you want. If you want to speak Russian, you could speak Russian. If you want to speak Ukrainian or mix. English is quite popular as well. Young people speak, and due to the connections with Europe and tourism and the rest of it. And that envy, I guess, plays part too.
Once you managed to speak to your mum and you put in place, what was then? What was the journey like? How did that transpire? And what was it like being there in amongst all this?
Было такое. Я до сих пор каждое же утро в 5 утра просыпаюсь и плачу. Вся в слезах. Сегодня первый день, что в 6 утра встала. Такое, как мы пережили, тоже очень трудно пережить. Я не представляю, что там сейчас люди под бомбежками, Мариуполь, там, Киев и все это. Но мы тоже очень многое пережили.
So mom is saying that she has, so this lived experience has been quite traumatic for her. She wakes up every morning at 5 a.m. and she's still crying. So it's been over a month. So today was the first morning when she woke up at 6 rather than 5 and in tears. She said that she cannot imagine what it's like for people who are still in Ukraine and still under the bombs. She's obviously very fortunate having escaped earlier on, like the second day, and hasn't had to put up with running into the bomb shelters and the rest. But still, it's very traumatic for her because of, being taken out and having to run away and thinking about all the people who are behind. It's still impacting her.
Тяжело морально было видеть эту картину.
It's very
вот эти
difficult.
женщины с этими детьми.
It's very
Emotional.
difficult, more like emotionally, and to see others in that same situation. So she's saying about the women and the children who were,
Границы, когда мы ели.
when they
За
were
рулем в основном женщины.
crossing the
Трое-четверо.
Is that sense of survivor's guilt almost? It's like, why am I so...
yeah, survival
many
guilt
are?
as well, and also I guess the empathy that you share with the people in the same situation, because it's largely women and children, and they saw these women with younger kids, because all the men from 18 to 60 had to stay behind, so there is no real help for anyone. So it's just the females with the kids trying to and being female herself, she knows what it's like to...
Да. Как вот этих детей.
Sorry, did you say that it was the females and kids who were trying to get out?
Yes, it's only the females by themselves.
So when we're hearing that civilians are getting bombed who are trying to get out of Ukraine, those are women and children.
Yes. Yeah, these are because men were able to help out to the point, perhaps like my cousin's partner. So she drove and then went. So her son as well, he's 25, he stayed behind. All our family, the male side of the family, all there. All the men are there, and they do all sorts of tasks. So
there's that fear as well that obviously loved ones are left behind because they've had to remain as husbands, partners, sons.
Да, уезжали только
Yeah,
женщины.
only women were managed to get out.
Я говорю, картина, когда женщина сидит впереди ребенок, месяца 8 пристегнутый, тут сидит ребенок и сзади двое детей. Такие.
Mom says she can't forget seeing this woman in the car. She's got like a baby in the front, the kangaroo one. Yeah, the sling. Yeah. And then there's a baby next to her sitting. There's a baby at the back, on her back, and there's other kids.
Да, и мы ехали, вот за ночь мы проехали 1 километр, мы ехали 10 часов 1 километр.
They were,
Надо было все время за рулем, машина в машине.
At night, they were traveling, so when they got... So they left from 8 o'clock in the morning on a Friday, and then they drove for a while, and then towards the evening, they came to whatever location, and because of the sheer amount of traffic, they could not progress any further. So they were traveling 1 kilometer, 10 hours, just to get 1 kilometer, just like literally.
Когда идут эти дети, но мы хоть в машине там как-то сидели, потому что было где-то минус 14 градусов, холодно.
It was minus 14 at night when they were in that car.
Minus 14.
And they were seeing the people walking by because some people didn't cross in the car even up to that point. So it was just the walking on foot.
Люди садились возле машины, выходили машинам, уже никто никого не стеснялся.
People, because of the lack of facility, well, there's no facilities really in the woods. So people were coming out of the cars or just walking and just perching down to have a toilet, and nobody was even like looking or paying attention, because everybody understands
there's a respect there.
Yeah, there is a need, you do it. So there was, I guess everybody was just so stressed out that there was no time to look or joke or whatever.
No.
Yeah.
Да.
But that was, I guess, from my perspective, when I was sending those messages and begging people to ring the border control and find out why there's delays. I just saw them being treated as cattle, just a huge amount of people and doing whatever they do, no food, no nothing. Yeah.
Surviving, just surviving.
I've got a question for both of you, actually. What was the emotions like, again, for the both of you, when you were reunited?
Когда мы встретились, какие эмоции были? Когда мы снова...
Слезы только.
Just the tears of joy, really.
Нет, и я так благодарна, что меня так принимали. Ну вот еще на границе на самой. Все люди с таким смотрели, видели мой паспорт украинский, с сочувствием. Там молодые ребята так на меня смотрели, готовы были мне, не знаю, что сделать, помочь. И все.
Mom said she was
Я не
really
верила,
touched.
что я тебя...
She was really touched by the people's kindness and empathy as she was traveling from Austria to the UK, and when people saw that she had her Ukrainian passport, and people would, on the checking the passport, seeing the letter of invitation, realizing why she's traveling, everybody was looking at her with a lot of empathy and support and just kindness, and she was touched by that. She really felt quite emotional, and
we see this so often, don't we? It's these times of when things are just so hard and the most awful things in the world happen. It's those little subtle moments of humanity, the good that you see people doing. You kind of need to cling to that, don't you, to get through it, I think, because it's overwhelming and it's sadness.
Yeah.
Когда мы стояли, сколько это мы стояли, 18 часов, не ходя в туалет, так вот, прижатые, без еды, воды и всего этого, то когда мы уже перешли в 3 часа ночи границу, нас встретили в Польше, мы думали, что мы оказались где-то в раю. Нам помогали вещи, и в автобус посадили, и довезли, так, дали там чай, все это. Мы были настолько благодарны им, что...
Mom said,
потому что наши люди там, были уставшие, 18 часов с маленькими детьми. И этот крик, 2 суток, крик детей: я хочу домой, я хочу домой, я хочу домой. Верещали эти дети, мы думали, что уже не выдержим.
So the 18 hours as they were standing on the border, where the kids were screaming constantly, so in the crowd. So 2,000 people were stood on the very small part of ground. There's largely women with these young kids, and the kids were just screaming, I want to go home, I want to go home, I want to go home. That no water, no toilet, nothing for 18 hours. And when they eventually crossed over border and got to the Polish side and were welcomed with such openness, with such humanity and humility and empathy, and were given cup of tea and attention and helped with the luggage and shown directions, they felt like they were in paradise. So this little gestures and these comparisons from what they endured for 18 hours to how they were welcomed on the other side, it almost felt like from hell to paradise.
Нас же, когда пропускали, граница была закрыта, коляски через забор передавали, пограничники принимали. Только маленькая щелочка, несколько человек, что ты мог вот так только пролезть в эту, и все.
it was horrendous there because there was no real like a big gate so people could get through. The border was really close. I don't know. And during the day, they would not let anyone through because they would see into the vehicles. But people were just stood still, and the border control or the border police, the people who were working there, was just passing the prams and the buggies over the fence. And the kids were screaming. They were scared to open up the gate because I guess they were scared for the stampede or for something like that. So passing the buggies, kids are screaming.
Над нами летали беспилотники. Все люди боялись, что это сейчас нас будут обстреливать.
There were
Не знали, чей это.
some drones or something like piloting.
Вертолеты и беспилотники.
Wow.
And helicopters were flying over, and that was giving a real sense of fear because people didn't know if the fire would open up or what it was.
Whether they're enemies or friendly, if they're being
They had no idea. So something is flying over you. It's quite intimidating. Kids are screaming. Yeah, people.
Но мы понимали, мы расступались, пропускали, потому что это шел гум-конвой из Евросоюза, из Польши, машины для военных.
Everybody who stood there obviously was aware and patient and because they were aware of those vehicles that were going through, because they realized that these were their humanitarian supply or military supply, and that was the priority. So that kind of helped them to kind of make sense why they were not being let through during the day, and it's only by night that's when the gate was opened and they were able to cross through. So I guess the border control had to prioritize. So it was constantly the emergency vehicles coming in and picking up the people from the crowd. People were, tossing and
I guess to draw this to a conclusion, you guys were reunited. What was the joy of that moment like? Like you've sort of already said, but I mean, how did that really translate for you as well, Nataliya? We sort of heard mother's side, but what was it like for you?
Well, for me, I have to admit that when I had, because that was quite challenging getting to London and making sure that I'll be on time and racing. I was running a bit late and my phone, my battery was dying. I was really conscious about my return ticket that I'm not going to be able to show. I guess all of this external, like life,
Yes.
The life of here in the UK and all this things that we go through, because the war is not here. We function in a different way. So I was really like I was on a mission, getting mom, making sure that I, don't, my phone doesn't run out of battery and I won't be able to show my ticket. And then, of course, when I saw her, I thought, yes, I felt relief, that total, like, my mission is complete. She's here. She's safe. I can now relax, because I was just on, the adrenaline rush.
Running on fumes, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I am absolutely. I was in I started getting flames, like flame out face and redness on my face because the hormones and things like that. Really high stress.
Yeah.
But when I saw her, there was like a relief. But of course, because here in the UK, she doesn't speak English, and I was still in that kind of, I gotta get her safely back, and now we have to, I need to get her some food. I need to make sure how we're gonna travel back. So I was still in a sort of get going.
Mission
go.
mode. Yeah.
So power. But I have to say, I would rather be running on this adrenaline and being an action woman
Yeah.
rather than being completely paralyzed and powerless.
I think the strength you've both shown through this and hearing the story.
Yeah. So
astonishing. I there's no other way to put it.
Yeah, crying in despair, it's really difficult, but I would rather do things, and I can understand why people are still in this sort of want to help, want to do something, because that empowers you and that makes you.
Well, on that was actually going to be my last question. Was people I think feel helpless to do anything. You hear about what's going on, and there's so many ways which we're told we can help. We but it can be very difficult trying to work out what we can do as just human beings to support Ukraine in this and support the people like your mother and people who are stuck there. What would you guys say, having lived it? What's the best thing we can do as average citizens that can really help support the people who are struggling through this?
Ну, я могу сразу ответить. Прежде всего, женщин и детей переместить как можно больше и дать, ну, хотя бы им там накормить и какую-то одежду. И чтобы они уже могли хоть спать ночью, тихо, спокойно. Я вот месяц, но я еще не могу это все. Мужчин и как? Освободить те территории, чтобы военные могли делать свою работу. Они же не могут стрелять все, когда там есть женщины, старики. Вот это. Но наши люди начали сейчас возвращаться в Украину, потому что здесь никто ничего еще, никаких ни денег не получил, негде жить.
So from mom perspective, having experienced that, there's she saying that there's definitely helping people to get away. The women and children must be helped out to get away and just be given some food, shelter, and some clothes, because they need to have sleep. You can't sleep there. So having a safety and knowing that your kids are okay, that's important. For men, obviously, she thinks that the men would do a better job in the country if they don't need to worry about civilians, because the civilians are actually putting more strain on the military, because you got to be a bit more careful. So if that wasn't the case, they probably would do things faster. So that's what mom's thinking. But the problem is, it's been a month and there's already evidence that lots of people are going back to Ukraine. The ones who managed to escape at the beginning. Nobody really wants to be staying abroad for that long. People want to go back. And some already started going back despite the situation, purely out of the lack of resources. So there's not enough financial support to maintain these people here abroad or in safety. It's just not enough, and people are going back because they're running out of their money. From personal experience, mom's been in Austria, but she has been purely on the funds that she already had or what we have been providing to her. And I would say that our case is quite luxurious in a way, because first of all, she was able to escape very early on. She had safety and shelter and support of my sister in Austria, and now she has my support here because we've got a home here and my husband is working and we don't need to we're not struggling, so to say. But this is not everybody's situation, and it's difficult to expect others, because every country, every citizen in every country has their own issues, and I don't know, I guess we haven't got an answer really.
What we know will do is we'll put in the description a bunch of links to different charities and support mechanisms are there. We'll do a bit of research first, so we put up their stuff that we know. We'll
Yeah.
get those supplies and those financial aids to the Ukraine people. Guys, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. It was moving is an understatement, quite frankly. It was
eye-opening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Horrifying and beautiful at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm just, the cherry on the cake, to be honest, is purely that seeing you guys together, and we'll put it up, but Nataliya sent me a photo of her and her mum when they got together and they met, and it was, the joy in the photo is everything that I think we need to see at the moment. And that
Yes. Thank you very much for obviously, getting in touch, and Mom is very pleased to meet you both.
Likewise, you've got no idea how much joy there is seeing you here safe and sound. It's
wonderful. Yeah, thanks for your time and for making this project, and hopefully that will be interesting for your listeners and people will understand this problem a little bit more.
So that was the interview, and I don't know about you, but I found it really hard to make it through that without being moved to tears. Please do hit like and subscribe, and if you've got any comments or anything that you want to say about it, please do pop it in the comments. You're most welcome to. I will see you again on the next episode. In the meantime, I hope you all stay safe, and I hope that your thoughts and prayers, like mine, will be with the people of Ukraine.